Hey, everybody. Welcome today to the first episode of Outsource Advantage. I am super excited to welcome our first guest today. He's someone that I know really well from previously working with him in the past. And now he's off on a new venture, and I'm really excited to hear about it. But I'm also excited for everyone out there in the industry to hear about it because it's a new take on something that's been prevalent in the industry, various industries for multiple years now, but we're really trying to do something different with Donnie's company as a strategic partnership. And so without further ado, I want to welcome Donny Mitchell, the president and CEO of Peppermint Robotics USA. Donnie, welcome to the
Hey,
podcast.
hey, Derek. Good to see you.
Yeah, nice to see you. You know, Donnie, I
Yeah.
always enjoy talking to you because you've taken, similar to me, but in a different aspect, kind of an
Mhm.
adventure in your career. Back when you were at HHS, you were here way before I was. But from everything I've heard about you, it's been similar to my path in terms of you've kind of bounced to solve problems across the organization, mostly in operations, but even dabbling in recruiting and other areas. And then ultimately, before you went to Peppermint Innovation, which is something that's near and dear to my heart. And so I just love that story. Could you open this up with a little overview of you as your professional experience and maybe one or two things about you personally?
Sure. Yeah, Derek. Thanks. So I started with HHS about 20 years ago, coming up on 20, maybe 21 years ago now or so. And I was an assistant director at a hospital down in Sarasota, Florida, originally, and was a PM shift manager, and then moved to an AM shift manager, and then a director role, eventually within the company, and moved around quite a bit. To your point, I was in different roles over the years. I lived in several states, different states over the years, and moved back here to Florida back in like 2013 or so, and it ended up hitting the road, doing a lot of work, trying to help deal with issues and things we had going on in the field at different locations around the country, and then ultimately, like you said, in innovation, and spent a lot of time working with our BevWatch team and worked through some floor care technologies and things like that we started there at HHS, and then ultimately on to Peppermint. Yeah. So it's been a great journey
That's
so far along the
yeah,
way,
that's
and
great.
lots of experiences. So.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I always think in things when it results in technology or has to do with technology, people who had previously been or then in the past have been involved in operations, whatever it is, whether it's healthcare or any industry. I always think it guides you a little bit better in technology because you're not worried about the proverbial ones and zeros in software or the hardware components. You're actually thinking about the outcomes. So I love that
Mhm.
and love that you're heading up Peppermint for that company and a valued strategic partner for us. One of the things I wanted to
Thanks.
talk about was, Peppermint Robotics itself, as well as in the USA. What really inspired the creation of Peppermint to focus on not just floor care robotics, but robotics in general?
So, this started back several years ago within HHS when we started looking at automation and trying to understand it for ourselves. I think, gosh, you may have to go back 10 years ago, perhaps when we bought our first IntelliBot, I think was the first one that we ever had. It wasn't very functional. We struggled with it a lot. And then we purchased, I think, some Avid bots over the years and some of the Tenant Braincourt machines, and all in an effort to try to understand this technology, even in some early stages when it wasn't really very compatible for our environments that we were working with in healthcare, when they were moving a lot of these machines in spaces like airports and grocery stores and some Sam's Clubs. You've probably seen them in there, maybe. That we were struggling to find the ways to implement them in the healthcare environment. And so when it became pretty obvious to us that in order to make sure that we were going to be able to maximize our ability to automate as things developed in the future, and things changed in the healthcare environment, in that space in particular, that we needed to start to innovate a bit on our own or find partners that we could work with to innovate and to create technology that was a bit more tailored to our specific environments, because healthcare, when we were working through this with HHS, is very different from a lot of the other markets, where the greater market where they were trying to sell these things to, some of our requirements for technology and safety and things like that just um, were a bit different. And so we decided to uh, find a company to partner with and work with, and that's when we found our friends over in India.
Yeah, that's great. And, you hit on a few of them. One of the things I was going to ask you is really around, especially you brought up healthcare, and that's where
Hmm.
HHS is focused with the partnership with Peppermint. What are
Hmm.
some of the unique challenges that healthcare represents and working in hospitals that you don't see in the big box stores or in airports? Around the world. For me, my first interaction with a floor care robot was actually at a grocery store and ran into my cart. Now, this was a few years
Yeah,
ago, and so I can imagine, you don't want to hit anyone in walkers, things like that, or patients being
yeah,
moved. But, what are those unique challenges that you see in healthcare today with your, 10 plus years looking at this space?
yeah, sure. So one of the things in particular, like airports or whether it's grocery stores, any of those kind of spaces, you're dealing with mostly mobile people, that can easily avoid, this equipment, or there's plenty of space around the machine for people to be able to pass by safely. But in the healthcare environment, in order to get an ROI on these machines, it really, you have to be able to move them upstairs to patient floors. And once you introduce them into a patient unit or in areas where you're going to have patients at, or moving patients through, even whether it be a bed or a wheelchair or something like that, you end up in a scenario where you really have to keep in mind all the different things that can come up, whether it's impeding someone, from getting by, whether you're like a bed coming down the hallway, you've got to be able to move the machine out of the way. So you almost need a person to have some level of interaction with it when you're up on a patient floor to keep things safe. As this technology evolves over the coming years, you're going to begin to see us functioning more like a Tesla maybe would, where we migrate over to being able to use more optics and more cameras, and to understand that these are now patients in a bed coming down the hallway versus patient or a nurse that's perhaps walking, at it, that may easily avoid the machine, and the machine can then understand that it needs to move over to allow the patient by and then go back to what it's doing. So ultimately, as we're developing this technology for the healthcare space, we're going to create intelligence that allows these machines to be able to navigate safely in the environment with minimal human interaction. The current state with technology and where everyone is in this space now, there does still require that some level of human interaction in order to make sure that it's a safe environment still for people, mainly the patients, but people in general.
Yeah, you bring up a good point there, and I don't want to get down a rabbit hole here. But when I talk about autonomous software or hardware or
Hmm.
robotics in general,
Hmm.
I think the common fear out there with people inside our organization at the home office or any company
Hmm.
is, all of a sudden people are going to wake up and not have jobs.
Yeah,
Or not have things to do because
yeah.
robotics are going to take over the world. I'm a
Hmm.
I'm a big believer and would be interested in your thoughts on this, but I'm a big believer in it's really not replacing, it's augmenting, right? It's all of those
Yeah.
things where it's almost like the bus routes. Like if you compare
Hmm.
Uber to bus routes, right? Like robotics can do the bus routes. It's going to do the same thing,
Yeah.
sometimes at the same times and frequencies all the time, and people are going to be more like the Uber,
Hmm.
the ad hoc requests, the things that you can't
Hmm.
plan for. But
Hmm.
also, there's just that, at least today's technology, that critical thinking aspect or the ingenuity, things that come from human, at least in the next few years. Can you kind of talk about how you see that evolution there? Are we excited about the fact that we're augmenting human and robotics and kind of combining that? And what's our path to get to some aspects where it is just going to be fully
Hmm.
autonomous?
Sure. No, good question, Derek. So I'm finding this. It varies a bit, So there are people definitely concerned about it, and have a viewpoint of looking at it in the through a lens where it is a robot replacing a person.
Yeah.
But it's not really that way. Like I shared with you earlier, especially in a lot of environments, we're able to augment some of the tasks that the people are doing to refocus them on other more important tasks. For one, in some of these, they say non-healthcare environments, but since you're in the healthcare space, or a large part of the HHS business is in the healthcare space, I'll speak directly to that because I have a bit of a different view when it comes to healthcare. I think we learned a lot during COVID and during the pandemic, where early on, I was traveling up to Nashville at a large medical center up there every week, and working with our team and navigating staffing issues and things that we were running into during that time. But in addition to that, we had, let's say, ICU units that would have 32 patients that all had COVID, all on respirators, very sick. This is early stages of COVID when we didn't really even understand the virus, didn't understand the true risk of it, potentially could be to people. But yet we still had to clean the floors in these areas. And so we were having to take and send team members into areas where it could be a potential harm to them to go in to do something that's as simple as cleaning a floor. So being able to automate tasks like that in a healthcare environment isn't necessarily anything even about augmenting labor. It's about patient safety and employee safety. And safety of their family and things like that in scenarios we run into. The other side of it is they were running into staffing problems, and sometimes in some of the hospitals it was hard to clean the floors because you didn't have enough bodies to be able to do it. So to be able to
Yeah.
have a machine that you can rely on to take care of a task, so that the more empathetic tasks like the direct patient care type items, cleaning of patient rooms, all those things can be done by people that can interact with the patients and give empathy to the patients. The task that can be taken care of with a piece of automated equipment, and keeping people safe in these environments, I think is important in healthcare. And this goes further, Derek, too. I mean, we're talking a little bit about our floor care equipment, but as we move forward with our ecosystem of products, we'll have delivery equipment for food carts and things of that nature. And this again was another thing during the pandemic that was a struggle. Um, from a staffing perspective, it was a struggle
Right.
to be able to have the bodies to do some of these tasks. It takes a lot of time to be able to run back and forth, delivering just carts with trays up to the floor. In addition, you were sending people again into these isolated units with COVID, active in the area, and the same with just regular isolation units. We're sending people into these units to deliver food trays and things like that are potentially in harm's way. Based on again our experience of the pandemic. So I find that in this environment in particular, there's quite a bit of a different story around it, regardless of the way that you view it from a human replacing a robot. In healthcare, I think it's a necessity to find ways to get some of these more redundant tasks that we can take care of with a machine done with a machine. So the empathetic task and the dexterous task that require humans can be done by
Yeah.
humans.
Yeah, that's great. It's interesting. We commonly talk to our healthcare customers around, clinicians and nurses operating at top of
Hmm.
license. It's almost
Hmm.
taking that same principle for housekeepers or culinary staff, right? And allow them to operate, quote unquote, at the top of that license and not do some of those
Yeah.
things. But man, that's a great point. I didn't really even put two and two together about the patient safety and, whether it's an isolation room, those things, even outside of a pandemic environment. That's a great
Hmm.
point. I appreciate you bringing it up. I know we talked a lot about healthcare. I know you guys are working on some things outside of healthcare. Obviously, I'm not going
Hmm.
to ask you to
Yeah. Yeah.
divulge any things you're working on specifically, but can you talk about some of the different industries or market verticals that Peppermint USA is looking to get into outside of just healthcare?
Sure. Yeah, we've got a lot of different verticals that we're interested in. Healthcare is just one of many, to be quite honest. And we're also, like I shared with you earlier, we're not just in, the cleaning floor machines. We're in material
Right.
handling, industrial type handling robots. We have several things, exciting things that we're working on in the automotive industry right now with several manufacturers
Oh, that's
that are
great.
that are interested in some material handling type things. We've got some real interest from several healthcare facilities right now in some of our material handling and floor cleaning robots that we're really excited about, getting into the airport space. We have quite a bit of interest there, and one of the things that we're targeting right now, in particular, is pharmaceutical, the pharmaceutical manufacturing. In India, we do quite a bit of this over there. I believe we have about maybe 80 machines, something like that, deployed in pharmaceutical manufacturing in India, and so we're really interested in that space. We've had some early conversations with some large manufacturers here in the United States that make some diabetes drugs and some other drugs here about this. And so it's some unique requirements for some of these, and we feel that as Peppermint, we're able to pivot a bit more than some of these larger companies and the legacy manufacturers that are in the space.
Right.
We have the ability to create some unique solutions for things in the pharmaceutical space, like in their clean rooms. It's a requirement to keep monitors on dust particulates in the air in a machine without a HEPA filter on the backside of the vac will create a lot of particulates that would potentially set off the sensors. And so we can work through solutions for things like that are specific to spaces where some of the bigger manufacturers really can't spend the time to do that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And man, what a great way to lead into the next question I wanted to propose you is, really when you look at Peppermint USA and Peppermint in general, what are some of the what I would call key features or capabilities of your most popular robots? And I'll kind of just bucket them into the more of the logistics and then also
Hmm.
into the floor care. But take that wherever you go. I know a few of the key features, but just really interested in you kind of informing our audience on why Peppermint Robotics is unique.
Yeah, sure. So a few things, but one in particular is our size and our ability to maneuver in smaller spaces. So a lot of the experience that we had from the HHS side of things was the equipment was too big, the equipment couldn't turn in an 8-foot hallway, it wasn't nimble enough in some of these environments. It was difficult. Even some of the better machines that we worked with prior to me stepping over into this role, they were still a bit larger, even though they could turn in an 8-foot hallway. They were just a kind of bulky. With the Peppermint equipment, you've got dual drive motors on both sides, and so think of it more like a zero-turn lawnmower where it can sort of spin on its
Gotcha.
own axis. So when it makes a turn at the end of the hall, it's able just to turn right back onto its next path without having to make um, a turn with like a front wheel, so to speak, and have an actual turn radius to it. So that's one of the unique features that about it that helps it function a bit better in the healthcare environment. In addition to that, we're working through some modifications right now on the lower scrub deck to widen it out to a 30-inch scrub deck. So our
Wow.
most popular scrubber is a 45 liter. We call it the SD45, and it's a 45-liter auto scrubber that currently has a 20-inch scrub deck, which is about the industry standard right now. Our competitors that are on the market are running that are in the healthcare space are running with a 20-inch deck. Anything bigger is typically going to airports or something like that. But we're going to be able to have a machine with a 30-inch scrub deck, so another 50% larger scrub capacity, but also under a much smaller footprint of a machine from a size standpoint, and able to zero turn in the hallways and things like that. So from that perspective, I think it's a real advantage for us. And another one for us is were ground up robotic builds. And so a lot of the legacy manufacturers that are in the space, they have supply chains that are set up around building legacy type auto scrubbers that we were used to pushing around. So a lot of it's brush motors, heavy battery pull type equipment. And since these were ground up robotic builds, we were able to use servo motors and newer technologies to help reduce the amount of draw on the battery. So we're able to get a much better battery life out of the equipment as well.
Yeah, that's great. And then, pivoting to I think my favorite feature that you guys offer, which I'm not sure why more people don't do this, but one of the things that I fell in love with Peppermint when we started to go down this path
Hmm.
was the fact that you guys are creating software and hardware together, right? Where I
Yeah.
think a lot of the industry players are purchasing licensing rights to other people's software and kind
Hmm.
of plugging it into their machines.
Yeah.
Can I'm not smart enough to talk about what the real advantages of that are, other than I know, other very large organizations who do things really well. Amazon comes to mind. They do this a
Hmm.
lot in their AWS
Hmm.
platform. Can you
Hmm.
talk to me a little bit about why Peppermint has gone down that path and some of the unique benefits of that?
Sure. Yeah, it enables us to be able to be more flexible in how we create solutions for the unique environments that we're in. Again, like we were talking about earlier, I mean, healthcare has a very unique set of challenges when you're in that space and trying to work. And so when you're working with a company who's selling their product to multiple companies, they're a bit more general in their approach to software solutions, where we can be quite a bit more that are specific to certain industries. We found that was one of the main reasons that HHS started to go down the path of trying to find a strategic partner in the space.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I mean that's a huge
It,
benefit for us, and typically on these podcasts, I won't emphasize HHS a ton because I want it for a broad audience. But I will say, from
yeah.
the HHS perspective, and you were the main focal point behind this. But having an operating company that's actually the boots on ground doing the work,
Hmm.
what I would call kind of steering the R&D lens instead of the R&D lens being you know, whoever gets the most feedback on features from all those
Yeah.
different companies, man, that's a game changer for not only us as the service provider, but also our customers. You know, and so expanding on that a little bit, you know, how do you really approach at Peppermint the research development for new and innovative ideas outside of what, you know, our operations gives you as feedback?
Sure. It falls into a couple of buckets. I mean, one, what were the things that to piggyback on your point, I mean, that was one of the
Yeah.
real advantages of the partnership with the HHS and Peppermint when this happened is really in my move over to Peppermint and being able to take some of this knowledge along with me is that we're able to look at this from a different lens than a lot of the other equipment manufacturers or robotic manufacturers on the market. You do have these, again, legacy manufacturers that are used to making their scrubbers paired with a person. They're not operators. They don't have the experience. They
Right.
don't have 20,000 employees in the field trying to use this equipment on a daily basis and understanding the struggles with it, and then understanding through experience how to work with people in the field to implement new technology and things like that, like we do as an organization. So having that in our pocket is a real advantage to us when it comes to having conversations with some of these organizations that we're talking to about strategies around implementation. Because some of the frustration with the companies that we've talked to that have been working through robotics over the last few years is some of our frustration when you go to implement them. You have to reimagine how to do this, and a lot of folks struggle with that. And if you're trying to
Right.
do that at an organizational level and you're sending 10 of these machines to 10 different locations and you're sort of relying on 10 different managers to come up their own way to do this, you become disjointed, and it's a struggle to make it a successful experiment. And so that is a strength of ours that we're bringing to the table here with it. And in addition to that, I mean, we do have an arm of our business that we're working to build as well, that we're creating Peppermint to be a bit of maybe we'll call it like a Windows of the robotics and autonomous world, where we can
Right.
take hardware, other pieces of hardware. We're working with some companies right now around this, and a couple of different spaces in healthcare where they have hardware, pieces of equipment that they need to make autonomous, and we can then install our sensors, some drive motors, and our software technology, and take any piece of hardware that needs to be able to navigate an environment and allow it to navigate the environment. So there's a couple of pieces to this software journey for us, but
Yeah.
a part of it is pairing it with our hardware, but we also have a part of the journey when it comes to the software about pairing our software with other people's hardware as well.
Oh, that's great. You know, one of the things I always think about when, you know, especially because you keep talking about kind of the fleet of robots, right? Not just floor care, but there's the
Hmm.
tug machines, there's all these other
Yeah,
machines that, you know, eventually
yeah.
they're going to be all over the place. So at Peppermint, how are you basically designing these to be user friendly, accessible to a wide range of customers?
Sure. Yeah, that's really important. That's one of our early challenges as we've been working through this here. And most of these machines in this whole company and the original Peppermint uh, the company was all incubated in India, and so everyone there is like a single language for the most part, and it made it really easy for the equipment to have words and text and things like that on it that made sense to all the folks there. But as you come here to this country, we're really truly a melting pot here. And so we have so
Right.
many different languages, so many different cultures, so many different age ranges, that are interacting with the equipment, that we needed to be able to work towards having more universal languages like icons and pictures and things like that on the UX, simplifying the UX where it minimizes the number of touches that it requires to make a task happen, and finding ways to make it, again, more universal languages than things that actually contain words and text on it. Yeah, that's been one interesting challenge that we've worked through as we've started to implement this here in the U.S. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. You know, kind of continuing down that path, are there any big kind of what I would call technological challenges, either on the hardware or software side now that you're really focusing on working to solve that may be a game changer or something that, you know, the common audience member wouldn't think of that, oh, you know, we wouldn't even think that you would need to solve for that, but you guys are working on early?
Sure. I mean, we run into things all the time, to be honest with you, Derek. There are things that
Yeah.
we don't realize, exist as problems, and then we find them, and then we have a great group of guys back in India, and we have a whole team back there with Ronal and Herschel and Swaraj and Anoop and that whole group. They really have been real they've really helped us sort through these problems and find unique solutions for each of them as we've gone along the way. I mean, as we moved into each new environment, there seems to be new things, you don't necessarily anticipate that pop up here and
Yep.
there. And so it's always interesting to learn. And it's great having a team like we have on our side that's able to kind of think through these things, step back and look at it through a different lens, and then come up with unique solutions for our customers and for the industries that we're trying to service. Mhm.
Yeah, one of the impressive things that I give you guys a ton of credit for is the amount of new products, features, et cetera, that you guys release on a consistent basis. I feel like every week and month I'm hearing, "Hey, version 4 is out," or "Version 4 is being shipped down to where you're at down in Florida to now beta test." And so, I think
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
great. Sometimes in these things, the speed to market on solving challenges is not conducive to success, right? And so I applaud
yeah.
you guys how you've been able to do that. I've got another question, and then we'll kind of switch lanes here. And you kind of hit on this with the battery consumption, I think. But is there anything you guys are doing on the robotics scale that addresses kind of a main concern in almost every industry right now, which is sustainability, right? Whether that's
Mhm.
energy consumption, water usage, chemical usage, all of those things where, in general, companies all around the world and organizations are looking to kind of reduce that footprint. Can you give me a couple examples
Mhm.
of Peppermint Robotics and how you're looking to at least help in that cause?
Sure, yeah. I mean, as you said, like our battery consumption is a big part of it. I mean, we are trying to make sure that we're being as efficient as possible in all the things that we're doing. We certainly look at this when we're from our packaging standpoint and we're trying to move things, over the seas and things like that. We're looking to be the most effective that we possibly can and being efficient and using the most reusable materials that we can use in that process and making sure that we're minimizing, waste and just simple things like shipping. We actually just had some calls around that this week. And so, yeah, we are. This goes along with a lot of our mission as an organization is to try to not just find ways to partner with humans and to augment labor, with humans, but to find ways to be sustainable along the way and to be a good partner to the earth and to people and everything else as we're working towards this new future that we all kind of have out in front of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to ask you to kind of take off your peppermint hat for a second and just some advice for our listeners. If someone
Mhm.
was going to start their own robotics business, what or look to get into the space, what kind of
Mhm.
advice would you give them as things you've learned along the way, not only as, pre-joining Peppermint, but just in general from your time spent working with robotics, but also in Peppermint?
Sure. No, that's a good question as well, Derek. So I would say to take a similar approach to how we did at HHS, and this was we kind of understood at the point, that the technology wasn't quite where it needed to be yet in order to function in our environment, but it was quite obvious several years ago that this was the direction that things were headed, and so we began trying to figure it out. And I think that's one thing that I would encourage people to do. That if they have a need for robotics or they have a space that's appropriate for current robotics, and they're interested in it, is to begin to explore it and take a look at it and understand it. Because at some point in the future, whether that's a couple of years from now or 5 years from now, this is going to be the form of floor care, most likely in healthcare and in most places you go, that you see most predominantly, not someone pushing a machine. I think you'll probably see a lot of the manual floor machines phased out over the next decade for sure, and most things gone to automated when it comes to small as well as large. We're working on we have a new one coming to market this week. Actually, a smaller SD20 that's a much more compact unit that's able to go through some smaller spaces. And so I would recommend to begin to explore it and figure it out. Because if you're a large company or an organization that's needing to do this ultimately, and you continue to put it on the back burner and look at it as more of a challenge than it is worth the effort that it goes into exploring automation, I think you'll be caught on the back foot here in a few years, because most of these companies are going to be exploring it, figuring it out, and they'll figure it out ahead of you, and it's going to be a struggle to catch up.
Yeah, that's great. And the only other advice I'd layer on top of that, and you think similarly, which is why I enjoy working with you, is, I come from a background of like agile development, right? And
Hmm.
really what I boil that down to is, man, you're going to fail. But when you
Yep.
fail really fast, and then start over that minute with the lessons
Yep.
learned, right? And so you just keep
Yep.
that cycle
Exactly.
going, and ultimately you're going to get there pretty quickly. Kind of flipping that on its head a little bit. If
Hmm.
you're a hospital executive or in operations at a big box store or airport, what are some of the things they should consider if they're starting to go down the journey of exploring robotics? And what should they look at when selecting the right partner, selecting how they
Hmm.
go through that process? What are some key tidbits you could give them to make them smarter as they go down that procurement path?
Sure. I mean, one of the things that stood out pretty early on to me as we started to talk with some partners and potential people in like retail spaces and things like that
Right.
was most environments aren't set up very automation friendly. We have a lot of like clutter and things like that are around the space and the environment. And when you move towards automation, if you think the most automated spaces we have in the United States right now are probably something like an automotive manufacturing plant or something of that nature, some manufacturing space, where you got a lot of robots moving around. Those spaces are very clean, they're very organized, even there's lanes for machines to be able to move around and stuff like that. And so when we go into, is an example, a recent a grocery store example that we've been working with, where there's a lot of these little middle of the aisle displays and things like that, that create clutter and obstacles to go around. Not only are you creating something that can't be moved by a robot to clean underneath or around where it is, you also create objects, that it has to understand, and then it creates uh, delays in it finishing, a pass, because it has to think, much more as it's going past some of these things. So that was one of the things we picked up on early on is some of the spaces need to be rethought a little bit in order, to have a true success with automation. And that's one of the things that we picked up on pretty quickly in some of these spaces. The other thing is the staff. You kind of touched on this earlier, helping the staff not be scared of it, helping them understand, that they're not being replaced by anything, that this is just a way to help give them better use of their time, rather than just replacing their time, which in a lot of these cases, this is the scenario, this is what happens. Even in a grocery store, the guy cleaning the floors is usually trying to struggle to also get the shelves stocked and do some other things in the meantime. So if you can have a machine take care of most of the floor care work while he takes care of, some of the small details, and only has to and spends the rest of his time stocking shelves, let's say, it helps make his day a little more productive and a little easier for him. So
Yeah, that's great. As you were talking, two things kept popping in my mind is A, whoever came up with the end cap and middle aisle things at grocery stores that stock things that kids want.
yeah,
I'm not sure I like that
yeah.
approach because my kids always get me to buy something from that. But then the other
Yeah,
thing is, I
yeah, you're
wish I would
right.
have talked to you before I bought my wife a Roomba a couple years ago, because that thing just sits in the laundry room now because there's just clutter everywhere. Hopefully, my wife doesn't listen to this
Yeah,
because she'll probably murder me. But that Roomba just sits there, which is so funny because when I go and tour around on some hospitals,
yeah.
as we're looking to start a new partnership, or even as we're out in our aviation customers,
Hmm.
sometimes there's just a robot sitting there cleaning dust, and the reason is
Yeah.
either A, they stopped using it for some reason and forgot about it, but B, they just don't have
Hmm.
the operational footprint or the forethought before they planned it out to really get that done. So I think that's a great piece of advice. Well, Donnie, thank you for your time on this. I'm going to leave you with kind of
Sure.
two quick questions here. One is, give me
Hmm.
something outside of work that you're really passionate about, just so the audience gets to know you a little better.
Yeah, sure, man. Well, I have four kids, and so I've got a lot going on, with kids and family, and I'm a golfer, a cyclist. I like to cycle and fitness and things like that. So yeah, I got a lot of activities, always moving, always going, and never sitting still. This is probably the longest I've
Yeah,
sat
that's
in
great.
a while.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I know we're going to put how to get in contact with you on this feed. But what's the
Okay.
best way if someone listens to this and we're like, hey, I just want to pick Donnie's brain, or I'm interested in Peppermint Robotics. What's your preferred way they get in contact with you?
So you can go to peppermintrobotics.com and reach us there. Of course, I'm at Donnie M at peppermintrobotics.com is my email. You can reach me through their website as well. So yeah, that's what I recommend.
Great.
Go there, check us out. We're on LinkedIn at Peppermint Robotics USA. Um, Look forward to talking to you guys.
That's great. I was going to give out your cell phone number to everyone, but I don't want to make you an overnight celebrity, so I'll keep that to myself. Is there any parting comments you'd like to say, kind of leave with the viewers?
No, just thank you. I mean, for inviting us on to do this. Was really excited about spending some time with you and getting to talk through this. Really excited about our partnership with HHS and really excited about getting this company launched here in the USA. We have a great team of people working on our side. We have some great ideas, some great products coming to market. We're working to build an ecosystem of robots to be able to allow customers, like a healthcare organization, to buy a suite of robots to service multiple needs of different types through one company with one software and one operating system, to simplify the automation process as they begin to grow and move that forward into different things other than just floor cleaning. So no, yeah, really excited about what we're doing with HHS and really excited about what we're doing at Peppermint here in the North America.
Well, thanks, Donnie. For all you out there listening, the way, as Donnie just mentioned, kind of the suite of robots or the various applications, I always relate it to when you go into your workshop, you don't want three different brands of power tools, right? Because then you need three different brands of batteries. And so with all the stuff you guys are doing, I think it makes it really easy to have that consistency in user experience, features, parts, maintenance plans, et cetera.
Yep.
Well, thank you, Donnie. For all you out there listening, hope you enjoyed this podcast. We are going to have a few more coming out with other industry experts and product experts. And if there's something that's on your mind that you'd love to hear about, or certain individuals you'd love for me to invite on, please chat about it. Email me. My contact information is below. Comment in the post here. But other than that, hope everyone has a great week. Donnie, hope you have a great week and enjoy the rest of your time.
Thanks, Derek. Thanks, everyone.